We got a little follow-up to our Quickjack videos, and that is we made some additions so we can move them around a little easier. Now there's a lot of guys on YouTube got a lot of different ideas with little casters. You can get little casters like this and all sorts of other things, but essentially what they're doing is putting wheels under the framework so that they're easy to slide around on the floor. Instead of the casters, we decided to go a little different route and went with a ball roller. And this is a 1-inch ball roller. They're pretty inexpensive at the junk tool store. I think they'll do the job. And what we did, some guys are tie wrapping them to the framework, and some guys are putting them on with magnets and sticky tape, and we just went ahead and made some brackets with 4 screws and 2 plates that'll just clamp over the arm, and you can take them off and on. You can move them forward and back on the arm depending on where they need to be, and you don't have to worry about tie wraps breaking or magnets coming loose or whatever. You just weld the ball roller to the bottom plate, drill your holes, and you got to make these things tidy enough so that the bolts, these are 1032 or 1024 screws, fit. There's a real narrow gap between the arm and the framework. We'll show you that. We've got 4 of them already done on one of the frames, but a guy could use 832 screws here to give himself a little bit more room. But when you make these, you've got to be aware of the clearance issues. You've got to straddle the frame, so it's got to be wide enough to straddle the frame, and the screws have got to be tight enough to the edge so that they fit in that gap. And then when you get 4 of these on that framework, 2 on each end, that thing's going to roll anywhere quite easily. So we'll get the camera set up on the other frame and show you how they look once they're on the framework. To give you a chance to see the unit that we put on the other end, and if I can get the camera up close here, we can see this gap down in between the 2 pieces that you've got to be real careful of. Right in there, you've got to leave enough room so that your bracket doesn't interfere with the main framework, but there is room in there. Now here you can see we have one of our ball rollers clamped around the frame. There's a real narrow gap between here and this arm, so those screws have to go down and fit in there, and your plate has got to be tidy enough that it doesn't rub on this side plate, but there's room for it. Like I said, we use 1024s. A guy could use size 8 screws. There's really no load on this. You're just clamping this, especially with 4 screws. You're just clamping it to the frame. Now in this case, we're still on the ground, and we just put a little weight on this to roll it, and it picks that frame part up off the ground so it's not dragging, and that's really the issue. So at that point, you can move the thing anywhere you want to go. And then, so you've got 2 at this end and 2 at the other end. And what happens when you raise the unit up, that comes up off the ground. So that's really not an issue then, and no harm, no foul, doesn't really bother anything. So we've got, as I say, 2 of them. You know, you can, with the screw system here, you can slide them back and forth, put them wherever you want. If you want to take them off, put them back on, whatever you want to do. And I think these ball rollers, metal ball rollers, will hold up a lot better than those little casters that got all those moving parts. This only has one moving part here, the ball and socket, so I think it's a better solution, but you know, everybody has a different idea. Figure out what works for you. But that's certainly an improvement on these things because they can be a pain in the butt to try to slide around on the floor. One thing to keep in mind, and you have to be careful of, is that if you do end up positioning these things a little farther down the rail or use something different, you want to be careful that you don't raise the whole unit up and take away clearance that you might have, especially on a car that sits real low to the ground. I mean, that's something you got to be careful of, is that you don't raise the whole thing up, you know, 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch, put it on wheels, and then you lose that much clearance under your car when you're going to go set it up. So, you know, just all you need is just to take the weight off the part that lays on the ground so you can move it, and you're good to go.